I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Welcome everyone to Arcane Mark Asks Paizo Art Director Kent Hamilton. And welcome, Kent.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. So we always start with our first question, which is answer whichever of the following, or connected if you want, is more interesting. How did you get started playing tabletop RPGs or Pathfinder?
I think it's probably a familiar story. I was in high school at a friend's house, and he had found, through a couple of his own friends, this game called Dungeons and Dragons. And I think his parents were out of town for a week, and so we had a bunch of guys over, and we decided to play. And we didn't stop playing for 5 days, and, we would take breaks to go barbecue and stuff, and he would frantically create new content for the game. And I've been drawing my whole life, so I was taken in right away, for 5 days, just pouring through all these books and looking through all these pictures. And then it became kind of a seasonal thing. We'd get together around Christmas, and one year his sister brought a Pathfinder book and said this was the new thing, and that took me in right away, and I've been hooked ever since.
Awesome. So then, how did you get started working at Paizo?
So I went to school in Southern California at Art Center College Design in a program called Entertainment Design, which is concept art for movies and video games and pretty much anything that needs to be fantastically created or illustrated. And it was a rigorous course, and throughout it, I worked for a couple different studios and found that I wasn't terribly taken by Hollywood, but all this while was enjoying looking at all these books and collecting these books for Pathfinder and D&D, and knew that when I wanted to graduate that I wanted to apply to Paizo because I really like their business practices as well as their kind of company moral compass. And started doing work that was familiar to the work that I was seeing in the books, where, you've got these pieces of monsters and characters and creatures that are kind of solitary and by themselves, but interesting and telling a story just in their own figure. So I worked on that for a while, and then I think a year after I graduated college, actually applied. And just, sent an email in through the online submission service. Did 4 original characters and 1 Paizo iconic, which I think was the Slayer. I forget his name.
Zadim.
But Zadim, yeah. So I picked him because I thought it was a little bit of a challenge, because he has a lot of fabric on him instead of just armor, and instead of just... it was showing a breadth of skills, and so I wanted to show that off in my application. And I think 2 weeks later, I got an email from Sarah saying, "Hey, we want you on board." And then, so that's how I first started freelancing. So then I freelanced for a couple of years, and slowly through Sarah Robinson and Adam Vick was getting more and more work. And was getting to the point where I was like, I'm doing so much work for you guys. Why don't you just hire me? And they said no. And so I actually found a different job somewhere else with Peterson Games, and they took care of me for 2 years. And then I think Sarah got jealous that I was working for somebody else. And so she decided, hey, we need a new art director, and why not have one that can actually draw and paint? So... Not that, actually, there's a couple people on staff who draw and paint beautifully. If you've ever seen Adam Vick's drawings, I'll call him out right now, because he actually has some of my favorite art online. But, so that's how I got started.
That's pretty cool.
There's a dog in the background here, just in case you ever hear it.
Dogs are always welcome, co-guests.
Yep. People on the show like dogs.
was good.
And it looks like Sheppy from the chat, also known as Sebastian Rodriguez, who's one of our the artists who's drawn for Paizo as well, says that he loves your art, Kent.
Oh, thanks. That's always nice. Um, you asked if I have any social media or anything to support, and I have an Instagram account, but don't take very good care of it. I haven't posted to it in a really long time, but it's always nice to get support there as well as anywhere else.
That's right. It's I'll put it on here for everyone. It is Kent Hamilton _art.
Nice and memorable there.
Yeah, is that actually right?
Yeah, it is.
I hope so.
Okay.
Because that's what I put on Twitter.
No,
and
it was.
Facebook
It was because then, and I looked it up afterwards, and then Mark misread it, so he's like Kenneth Hamilton.
No,
and
I
I'm
thought
like,
it was Ken the Milton because I was just being tired.
Ken the Miltons.
And I was like, wait, it's just no, it's
like
just his
no,
name.
dude, it's just Kent Hamilton. His name _
So if
art.
people are looking, it's Kent the Milkman at art.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And I have some pictures from that I want to show off here. But first, I wanna grab a question that we have from the viewers here. Which where is your pic from? The pic of you scuba diving here.
Oh, this is just actually locally. I dive locally in the Pacific Northwest, which people find crazy apparently because it's cold. But Jacques Cousteau would disagree. It's some of the best diving in the world. This is actually just by Picnic Point Beach, kind of in between Edmonds and Mukilteo. It's our little junkyard backyard dive spot. Me and my buddies.
Cool.
So, how long have you been scuba diving, and how did you get into that?
It's been a while. A friend of mine, Alex Tilley, he in his childhood, his dad used to scuba dive as a way of recreation, but also just to put food on the table. You've got a grocery store in your backyard, and so throughout the year you bring crab and fish and go with a Hawaiian sling and spear fish and stuff. And just in the last couple of years, Alex finally decided he was interested and wanted to try it out, and went and took a class. And between we've got a dive group of 4 people, and between the 4 of us we've got maybe 300 400 dives down. So
Oh wow.
That's pretty awesome. It looks...
it's just a beginning. Let's put it that way.
So you said that you usually dive locally. Are there other places that you've gone or that you would like to go?
Oh, there's the whole world is a place to go. Hawaii, Southeast Asia is apparently amazing. There's places in Africa. I actually want to go to. I think it's south coast of England where you can see these giant whales, and which kind of freaks me out. I've had a couple encounters with sea lions, or just one encounter with a sea lion, but that one encounter felt like 1,000 encounters because of how scary it was. But
Well, what happened?
so me and my buddy Alex were just down there diving, and this is at Edmonds Underwater Park. So if you're familiar with the Edmonds Ferry, there's a water park off to the side where they've sunk a bunch of boats and stuff like that. And we were down there in maybe 5-foot viz, which is really incredibly bad. You can't see your hand in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And we were swimming along, and we were looking for this big kind of pirate ship that is sunk out there, and got off course, or just it might have been sitting right in front of us, and we just couldn't see it. So we were swimming, just turning into an exercise dive, and I'm zoning out at this point, and he's kind of in front of me, and I see him stop. And I look up, and kind of through the green murk, we see this big black shape in the water. And I'm thinking, oh, great, like we found the boat. This is finally, we've been down here for 40 minutes, and we've got a little bit of air left. Let's go check this out. But then this giant, structure underwater twists and moves and shoots off in some direction.
Oh.
And so, yeah. all of a sudden, my gut drops out of me, and I swim up to him and get kind of vertical because I've read that's what you're supposed to do with sharks. We don't exactly have a lot of sharks around here, but that's not where my mind was at the time. And then the shape comes back, and it's just a big ball, and then it turns, and it has a fin on top and a fin underneath. And I'm thinking, oh, like we're not where I thought we were. Like we're way deeper or something, and this is a whale. And then it shot straight at us, and it just apparently sea lions have a knack for shooting at you in the last second, turning and kind of twisting out of the way because they're super agile underwater. And so this thing's just eye to eye with me, and it's it felt like half an hour, but it was probably 10 seconds. So it swam past me and swam back past us again and disappears. And I looked at my buddy Alex and I say, well, I'm underwater, so I don't actually say, but I'm like, you're at this point you have developed telecommunication with your minds and say, like, let's get out of here. And we're swimming back, and you can't hear anything underwater, so this thing swims past me and then over him, and he's completely unaware of it. And this is the first time I'm seeing how big this thing is, because its head is on one side of him and its tail is on the other, and Alex isn't exactly a short guy. And it's just an amazing experience. So if I can see something bigger than that, it'll be really exciting, because for the most part, it's just little guppies and stuff down there.
So it looks like Katrina, who asked where it was, has been to the same place where you took the picture and said that you got better visibility in that picture than she experienced there. She also recommends diving Ningaloo, west coast of Australia, for whales and whale sharks, and fabulous beach diving, though the water is warm. So you'd have to cope with that.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be fine with coping with warm water. At this point, that'd be a luxury.
And looks like she had a question. Dry suits?
Never. I mean, so if you're in the diving world, for the most chance, I mean, if you're going to go up to British Columbia or anywhere up north, or you probably end up in a dry suit just because you have to. But I like being in a wetsuit because it's a lot less fuss. It means you get colder a lot faster and you're cold the whole time, but you're not going to experience quite so many problems. And so while I'm still young and fit, I'm gonna be using a wetsuit for as long as I can. But there is some jealousy when you get out of the water and somebody else is getting out of their dry suit, and they're like James Bond. They've just got their suit on underneath, or their pajamas, and you're getting out of the water drenched and soaked and salty and cold. It's so I guess I'll change my answer for dry suits to someday.
All right. That makes sense.
So who took the picture?
This is my buddy Hannah Hansen, Alex's soon-to-be wife. She is an underwater photographer. If anybody's interested, she's got a website. It's Hannah Hansen Photography, and it's spectacular stuff. She takes videos and photos of us diving all over the Pacific Northwest, and she, picked it up I think a year ago and is just killer at it. She is a natural-born photographer and in one of the coolest, fields of photography that there is, in my opinion.
What is the spelling of Hansen and Hannah?
So Hannah, Hannah.
All right.
And then Hansen is Hansen.
All right. That is what it looked like in terms of having a photography. And is the Instagram Hannah_Hansen_photography?
Let me look that up. It might be. Sorry.
Make sure we're crediting the right Hannah.
Yeah, because there's also a Hannah N. Hansen that does family portraits.
Could be the
and
same.
No, that wouldn't be her.
Hannah Hansen.
Oh, you know what? Here, Hannah
Hansen.
Look up Hannah Hansen underwater photography.
Oh, I see. Hannah Hansen
scuba...
UW photography.
Yes.
Wow.
Scuba diving, photography, and the beautiful
There's
cold
like
water.
7 Hannah Hansen photographers who all use that kind of thing. But this is a
But
really
only
cool
one
site,
of
so
them
I'm
goes
gonna link
underwater.
the correct Hannah Hansen here. The
There you go.
smugmug.com Hannah Hansen.
Yeah, and she also actually has another website that I'm a part of in a small way called I Love Nudies. Nudies being short for nudibranchs, which are these little beautiful sea slugs that you find all over the world, and there's a pretty big population of them in the Pacific Northwest. And she sells merchandise of their logo for now, but I think someday it'll be something more expansive.
All right.
It's a little side project, I guess.
I'm probably not gonna search "I love nudies" on my Google. Just because
it's
I'm not,
NUDIS.
Yeah,
if
that seems
helps.
like that's also gonna be finding other things.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure that was her point. Oh, hey, here's my buddy Roo. He's my dog that's joined me. Hey, sweet boy.
Aww.
Oh, he wants his dinner.
Hi, Roo.
But I've linked everybody to the underwater photography page at the very least. It's got some really cool looking pieces as well.
Yeah. And I will. Yeah. Sounds good.
Stump Monkey, I'm not on my work machine for this. I am on my desktop. That's why it just on Tuesday died in the middle of the stream, so that I can. But I'm navigating around in there, and we're using the laptop to stream, and it's working out.
Yep. Our work machines are on a table about 20 feet that way.
That's true.
So I wanted to talk also about this game that you've done the art for, Hyperspace.
Yeah, Peterson Games.
So that's the as part of your story. That's where you were working at before Paizo directly.
Yeah, kind of. So Paizo, and then Peterson Games, and then back to Paizo.
Oh right, yeah, freelance
official
for Paizo, then Peterson Games, and then at Paizo.
Yeah. So Hyperspace. It's actually one of the projects that stole me away from working for Paizo. I was working freelance on it to begin with because Sandy Peterson made me a pretty great offer, which was he wanted to make a board game and he wanted one artist to do all the artwork for this game. And that spoke right to the core of me because I thought that'd be, what a cool thing to have just in your life. Mm-hmm. Have a game made and have everything in it, have had your hand on it. So that slowly turned into, the same conversation of, hey, I'm doing so much work for you. Why don't you just hire me full time? And he took me up for it right away. And Peterson Games treated me really well. And that is an amazing project. And actually, so board games, I play a couple, and this is one that I got to play test a little bit. And I think there's somewhere online that you can play a core version of it.
That's cool.
And it's actually, if you get, some free time and you're willing to learn a new game, it is spectacular. It is one of the best games I've played.
I'm sure you really liked the art while you were playing the game.
You'd think that. I like my art when I'm working on it.
Oh.
I like my art when I'm thinking about it. And as soon as I'm done working on it, I hate it for at least a year.
Oh.
Well, I think that's probably common with a lot of artists because, I spend all my time looking at it, which means, if anybody looks at it again, they'll be seeing it with fresh eyes and not see all the mistakes that I'm very well aware of. So.
Now, that's true for us writing things as well. There's always something that slipped our grasp, and we're like, no, it's wrong.
Yeah, there's a brush stroke out of place or a sentence not quite structured right. Or
it looks like Stump Monkey in the chat plays Hyperspace and is really impressed how much faster the gameplay is than similar Space Empire type board games.
Yeah, I think so. Sandy was and Lincoln Peterson both worked on developing the game mechanics for it, and that was one of their core tenets was they wanted it. Twilight Imperium exists, and that takes, 8 years to actually learn and play. So They wanted a version of something similar, or at least scratch the same itch, but you could pick up and play in an hour or two, uh, and have fun with it without it taking over your night.
That's pretty cool. And I'm guessing if there's an online version, you don't even need to do setup for that. So it's probably even faster.
Yeah, which is I think it's like Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator or something along those lines. They used it as they partnered with some online board game company as a way of marketing it
Cool.
a while ago, so that should still exist somewhere.
So I've linked it.
I'm
up
sure there's
on
links
the
if you go to
Games
Peterson
site.
Games.
Mm-hmm. And we showed the we showed the art for the human spacefarer here.
Yeah, so this is I think in canon this is Aurora Ultraviolet, a character actually based off of Arthur's, who's Sandy's son. So this is Sandy's granddaughter. So Arthur's daughter, Aurora. And in fiction, I think everything in the game is told from her perspective. So in the rule books and in the art books and things like that.
So she's like a really key character to the narrative of the fiction.
Yeah, as much as a narrative as exists. I think they're planning on developing that further in the future, but for now, she is the core character to it.
Cool.
And I'm curious, what is a Nomia? Because I just put up the art for this one. This one definitely caught my eye as an oh gosh, giant space monster with a terrible moth that's going to devour you.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, the Nomia are kind of a horrible species of plague and disease, and it's actually kind of fitting for right now. Like they are a species that causes our current environment, is I think their method of attack. So pretty hateful, is how you could put it.
So they start a disease on purpose to weaken a species that they're going after with the disease first. Is that sort of their?
Yeah, I think that is their method of attack, and I think they reproduce quickly. And just anytime you've seen a sci-fi where there is a horrible thing that takes over rapidly and disgustingly, that's the Nomia. In this game, I tried to help create a sort of visual guide to all the different space species that there were, and give them distinct color palettes to work with. So I think that shows through clearly in this, that they are kind of green and yellow and pink. And disgusting and horrible. I'm disturbed that this is the one that you were drawn to.
Yep, Linda just immediately was like, gotta do that one.
I was like the person, and then the one that's like, oh gosh, what is this thing? I mean, because I think that it really shows more of the range of the different things that you were illustrating here.
Yeah. Oh, that's totally fair.
Very cool. So I know Linda has a few more pieces on here as well. Are there any more from Hyperspace though?
I'm about to put another.
Oh, she's adding another one up there. She can't stop. It's good. It's the pink. It's the pink one with no face.
The Zepzeg.
Zepzeg.
Oh, the Zepzeg. They're almost the complete opposites. So Hyperspace is actually based off of a game that Sandy Peterson made back in the 80s called Hyperspeed. And I think all of these are alien races brought from that. So the Zepzeg were kind of these aristocrat sort of above it all species that are supposed to be psychic and beautiful and otherworldly, and so I wanted to go for kind of a mother of pearl sort of skin tone and pattern to them, and just kind of unclear as to exactly who they are, what they are, or give any sort of distinct characteristics to them other than like, how can you make something that is beautiful and alien without making it definably human as well? And so taking away its face was a start. But actually, being a scuba diver, one of the things that I'm drawn to is just how beautiful the underwater world is. So I brought some of those elements into this, where you see kind of I mean, hopefully it speaks for itself, but the underwater sort of elements in this,
Right.
where it's, the fin structures that are guiding down the neckline of this alien and
the
across
sort of
the cheekbones.
shimmery, like almost like you're seeing it through a ripple of something aspect to some of its features.
Yeah, and the crown on the crown on their head there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to work on that project. That's for certain. It gave me a lot of creative freedom to work on, just from the ground up. I think, kind of similarly to Paizo, it was just a couple sentences, and from there, creativity is born. And there's just a lot of give and take there as far as the interest is built. Yeah, I'm not actually sure what else to say about it.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So, now that Kent is here at Paizo, I definitely will apologize for the fact that we sometimes put a good amount of work on Kent's plate when we need help, because previously, if we got a piece of art back and we needed a let's say there's a druid who is turned into a hippo, like he's legitimately a hippo, and we got back a piece and it was a guy with the head of a hippo, and like it's hard to get that back to the artist and have it changed and get a hippo. But now that Kent is around, instead of running around like flailing our arms and just being like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? It's not a hippo. Or if something like that happens, we can ask Sarah and be like, can we have Kent adjust this piece so that there's a badger there, or can we have Kent do something with like a person who's like kind of an ooze person? And so I'm gonna apologize for all the times that we need to do that.
Oh no, you're keeping me in work by with that. Yeah, that's turned into a funny part of my job. It's actually, being creative has its own strains, and just kind of on a technical level, fixing things sometimes can be a sort of relaxing day, because it's just the technical side of what I do taking over. So it's like, if something's supposed to be blue and somebody painted it red, that's an easy fix and kind of an easier day at work for me.
Right.
So please don't be sorry. It's a little appreciated while maybe not very efficient.
You know what? No, it's so useful. Like, we have a type of div in Pathfinder called a Piraka, and the only thing that we really know about them, very specifically in their presentation, is that they have, each div has like a sort of compulsion that they either have to do or they can't stand. And Pirakas cannot stand the color red or wearing red. They never will, except for the one in the art piece for Pathfinder First Edition is in red. So that would have been something that if you had been there back then, we could have been like, we need it to be any color except red. But it just got to the book and it is red in First Edition, because we did not have that option.
Well, I'm happy to be of service, and it seems like a good fit.
So you mentioned enjoying those sort of more open-ended 2-sentence briefs. What is an artist? What kind of details, what level of detail do you generally appreciate to get from people who are requesting art from you?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So
I was a little distracted. I need to grab my computer charger here real quick.
All good. So I was curious, what sorts of things do you appreciate in art requests when someone is requesting something from you? What kind of details do you like to see people expressing? What kinds of things do you like to see them leaving open to interpretation and that sort of thing?
So the kind of things that I look for is, like if there's specific details that like you can't live without, right? Like, what are the hard points of the design? Like, does this person need to have black hair and blue eyes, or what have you. Uh, like, it's always nice to know that those are covered first. But from there, it's like being able to work with somebody else and come up with a creative idea to kind of expand the storytelling in an art piece. So maybe there's a kernel of something put into a sentence in an art order, like, oh, this person, you know, has a very elaborate shoulder piece. Thinking a little deeper than like, oh, how do I make this look badass? Uh, More like, well, what's their culture? What's their history? Well, you know, what reason do they have a shoulder piece other than it looks cool? And bringing that storytelling into the design, I think personally it breathes a lot of art into it. When I'm directing other artists and I see that they bring that same life into it, I really respect and appreciate that. So as far as from the perspective of an art order, a little bit of ambiguity, but also, you know, something to build off of, because a completely clean slate means, you know, you could take it in so many directions that you get stuck not going in any direction.
Right. So we talked a little bit about from the direction of drawing things yourself. As an art director, you also are ordering art from other artists. I actually had a question about that. In Lost Omens Legends, people have seen some of the art pieces on the sort of Galarian panel during PaizoCon, but I've seen more of them, and there's some really fantastic stuff from just like some first-time artists in there. How do you find and decide about like what type of artist you want to bring on for a particular project based on like what the order is and what the project is?
Yeah. So for a typical project like that, I already have a pool of artists that I go to that I have a relationship with. So I look at their strengths, because sometimes you have somebody who can paint figures really well or creatures really well, and they're not necessarily artists who you want to make, you know, a spaceship with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at people's strengths first. There's some people who, you know, I put a little gold star next to their name on my spreadsheet, because I know that they've got all of it handled. It's going to be good from the concept level up through the rendering level and the storytelling level. As far as finding new artists, some people reach out to me, and I'll review their portfolios, and I'll decide like, oh, you know, like I've got to use this person on my next project. I'll write their information down, or I'll respond to them, or I'll put them, you know, on the back burner, and when I have the time to look at them again, and I'll reach out to them eventually. But as far as me finding new artists, ArtStation is a really good way of putting a portfolio together. And so I'll go on there and just on occasion go through there and see if I can find anybody I haven't seen before. And I'll look at their art. And there's a couple things I'm looking for typically. Are they drawing something original, or are they drawing, you know, fan art? If they're drawing fan art, usually I skip it just because it's like, it's not showing a lot of original design work. And that's not to say that fan art doesn't have its place in the world. It's just, you know, if I need somebody to draw a lot of iconics, they're valuable. But I want to know that whoever I'm hiring has the ability to design something original, and think through a design. I'm looking at lighting and form and structure and anatomy. I'm looking at, you know, is this person just good for drawing a character or a creature, or can they do a full scene? You know, we have a lot of full scenes in our books, and so if I can find somebody who can do those, I write them down right away, because typically if you can do a full scene, you can also just do a character, which makes you really valuable. And I also look for people who are painting in a way that, you know, matches the Paizo style, which is realistic but fantastical. You know, we don't really hire anybody who does anime or art styles that aren't coherent with the rest of our style. And if they draw in a way that brings a little bit of life to their painting. So like if you're painting the color blue on something, that's great. But if you're bringing a little bit of life into that with some unexpected colors or an interesting painting technique, I might pay a little closer attention because, in the end, this is ending up in a publication. Uh, Typical concept art is either seen by a team of people who are working on a movie or a video game or what have you. It's seen for a couple minutes and it's pushed along and it ends up in a movie and somebody sees it and it's on screen for 3 seconds. In a publication though, this is sitting in front of a bunch of people who are listening to a DM drone on for half an hour and they want something to look at. And so, at first it needs to look cool. And then 15 minutes later, you need to be able to look at that same piece and look a little bit deeper in it and see something new. So whenever I'm hiring, I like to look for people who add just a little bit of extra design work and a little bit of extra attention to detail than just, ticking off the boxes right on the front end.
So speaking of pieces that have unexpected color and attention to detail, I've just put up the witch art of the woman holding a bowl with flowers and a branch with she has a scythe and earrings and a branch with a little fruit hanging off of it.
Yeah, Mother
Oh
Myrtle
yeah.
from
And yeah, I know
Pathfinder Adventure Card.
I know she's used as Mother Myrtle for
But she
Adventure
may be
Card Game. I don't know
something
where
else,
she
too.
started out, but
I think she was originally ordered to me as a Baba Yaga kind of figure, and then it changed, but like a happy one. um, but yeah, I'm familiar with that piece. That's actually, a pretty good example of what I'm talking about right now, where it's, uh, I tried very intentionally to put a lot of details and a lot of storytelling into this image. Because if I remember correctly, she had, a mixing bowl where she's
Mm-hmm.
mixing ingredients and maybe it's been broken in the past but it's been put back together because it's her favorite bowl. She has kind of a sinister looking scythe but it's been lovingly taken care of and painted, and she's found a wishing stone that she's attached to it. She's wearing she's wearing her ingredients as well as keeping them with her so she can use them on a whim. And while she's very happy and friendly, her hands are covered in turmeric or some spice, and her sleeves are a mess. And her face is clean, but her hands are absolutely filthy. And so the longer you look at it, you start to see like, oh, she's also been all over the world because here's some leeks and garlic, but here's some interesting berry that I've never seen before. And she's carrying some art with her that maybe or jewelry that she's gathered from across the world, or a sailor's hat, which, what's a woman in the forest doing with a sailor's hat? And, maybe she's surprisingly strong because she has this big cauldron on her back with a big heavy wooden lid and it's strapped across her. Uh, so it's also just more fun, I think, to be an artist if you add storytelling because you get to think about your character and add your own story to it.
That's
None of
really
this,
cool.
I think, probably is any part of the game, but it's my own little internal narrative while I'm working on it.
but I mean, then when people look at these pieces of art that we have in Paizo products, I think that's why why they can so naturally inspire people looking at those to think, oh, I could build a character like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what is their story?
Yeah, people in chat have been saying that they've been really appreciating the descriptions you've given, and that's the way they feel, or they're saying it's gorgeous. Adam Daigle's in here, and he says that all the techniques you're describing for visual art, it's funny how it parallels and translates so much into the art of writing as well, just in many similar ways. And then a little
That's very cool.
discussion started about that.
And Adam also said Kent has been such an asset since he's joined us.
Well, that's good to hear. It's a little quiet in my corner of the office, so it's nice to know that people enjoy actually having me around, even though I don't talk that much.
And I know you talked about concept art, and that's another cool thing. So before you were here, like we occasionally had Wayne Reynolds do some very high profile concept art for certain categories of things, but a lot of the time we just had to take whatever was the first thing here. But now there's sort of a new thing we're doing where you can give us some concept art just for a brand new concept, so to make sure that other artists are like sort of matching that concept. Can you sort of explain how that works a little bit better? I know that it exists and sort of how to put in a sheet to ask for it, but I'm not sure what goes into that.
Yeah, so I could talk about it a little bit, but I think it's a new enough thing that I'll have to be a little bit careful about how I
Fair
step
enough.
around it.
Hmm.
But for the most part, we have projects that are coming up in the future, and they are areas or peoples or ideas that we want a cohesive design around. And between the writers that we hire and between the artists that we hire, we want things to connect. Uh, and so I think that's a fairly decent part of my job is coming up with uh, the visual element of these ideas, with direction from the developers uh, to create a look. Um, and that's a lot of, back and forth where there's a project we're working on right now where developers came up with, a couple of ideas and they sent them my way. And I worked visually on it and added some of my own ideas to it. And that goes back to the developers and they take that and they think, okay, well, here's this idea. How do we expand on the energy he's put into this? And how do we, you know, uh, cultivate it as well as direct it? And then it goes back to me, and it's a back and forth until we have kind of a final cohesive idea that works. So when we put it in front of three different artists and five different writers, they're all talking about the same thing.
That makes sense.
Um, yeah.
So let's see. There's actually a question in chat from Nicole, who is wondering, Kent, have you always been into creating art and creative outlets, or if not, what initially drew you to it?
Uh, so I've been drawing since I could, or as my mom puts it, since I could pick up a pencil. Um, I think it was my way in school of ignoring the math teacher and making time pass a little bit faster was to do little sketches of armor and of monsters and what have you. I used to actually sit in church and I didn't want to pay attention to anything there. So I would sit in the pews and they'd have these little envelopes there and they would uh, they'd have these little pencils, and I think it's so you could write your donation to the church or something. And I would take these envelopes, and on the face of it, I would draw the face of a monster, and on the flap of the envelope lid, I'd draw the inside of its mouth. So at the end of the day, I'd have this little monster that I could open it up its mouth and have it talk to me, and then I'd put it right back in the pew. So later, when somebody wanted to donate something, they'd have a little monster to look at on accident.
That's great.
So I think a lot of my interest in art has come from avoiding responsibility and mischief. But no, I've been drawing since I was a little kid, and I think I actually have a little sketchbook from when I was a kid where I did essentially what I'm doing now, where I created a fantasy race of kind of rabbit creatures or lizard creatures and went through and said, here's what the hero of these creatures looks like, and here's the the an archer or a mage, or what one of their mounts looks like, or what one of their war machines looks like, and I just filled this whole little book with. It has Marvin the Martian on the cover of it. It was probably just a little '90s throwaway notebook, but I filled actually every single page of that book, and it's just so similar to what I do now, where we take a race of people or a culture of people, and I draw every single detail of their pottery to the clothes they wear to the weapons they wield to the ships they use, and so I guess you could say I've been doing this my whole life.
So Adam is really surprised because he also drew things on those church envelopes.
No way.
No, he really did. Adam Daigle.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense that we ended up at the same company, though.
Yeah, right? It's all the people who drew on the church envelopes.
Yeah, it's a prerequisite for Paizo.
Right?
My church growing up had like these little coloring pages. They give us like a few little crayons, and they had these little coloring pages with scenes from the acts of Jesus that for kids to color. So I guess they probably didn't get as many people drawing on the envelopes with that.
Oh.
Or maybe they
well, you could just draw a monster and say it was from the Book of Revelation.
We actually also had those little pieces of paper, and I would take them and I'd flip them over and draw something completely original on the backside of them. Because I couldn't stand the idea of drawing on top of somebody else's depiction of, the Holy Grail or something.
Mm. And also, it looks like Nicole also drew on those envelopes, but just those S's that a lot of people drew in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. S's and peace signs and
right.
yin-yangs and smiley faces.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was eyeballs for some reason.
Linda, you just drew a ton of eyeballs?
Yeah.
Is that why Hyakume are something that appeal to you?
I don't know. I guess, I felt like I could draw them more than most other things. But I still can't really draw.
Fair enough. I mean, we have that sketch that you drew of your Psycho Pump plotted planner
please
Scion.
don't bring up my random chibi sketches in the presence of an actual artist.
Your chibi planner Scion giving pie to a no-soy Psycho Pump. That was definitely not up to the level of quality we've been talking about thus far in the stream, but it was cute.
I don't know. I appreciate work like that. Anytime I've ever tried to draw something cute like that, it ends up horrific, so... I think there was a Leshy that I made once, and it was rejected whole hand by my party because it was a little too violent or a little too disgusting or something.
So is this one where you were illustrating characters that you were playing or that someone in your group was playing?
Yeah. So I played Pathfinder. It was a homebrewed game. By my buddy Jonah Baumgars, and we played on and off for like 5 or 6 years. And had I known that it was going to take that long, I probably would have done something other than a dwarven fighter, because all I ended up doing was standing in one place and hitting stuff. But because of that, it gave me a lot of time to just work on drawing the characters that came into the game, or if we fought a giant squid or something, I'd end up drawing that for, 2 hours. But yeah, so there's a lot of inspiration that came from that environment. It makes a lot of sense why I also ended up here.
That sounds awesome, though, because I know that, trying to remember what happened in a past campaign, you can go back and look at the notes or whatever, but I imagine that having the actual art where you illustrated what those encounters were like, what those characters were like, makes it so much easier to really remember what that experience was.
Yeah. So actually, just when we first started playing, it was before I had graduated college, and was only vaguely aware of what I wanted to do someday, and so we'd sit and play, and Jonah started his own website called D20 Despot, and it's just homebrewed rules as well as revisions for rules and stuff like that. And I would draw for him on occasion, just like new monsters that he had homebrewed on something he called Monster Monday, and we'd come up with some new monsters ourselves, and I would draw them, and he would write them and stat them up, which I don't know how anybody does that. I don't know how you guys do that. But I sure do enjoy drawing them. But that was probably a pretty big part of me getting interested in Pathfinder and Paizo, was working with him on all those projects.
Yeah, it looks like his site is still up. It was on hiatus for a while, but then on April 1st of this year, he put out some 5e items.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's working for Peterson Games now on their they're doing a 5th edition third party adventure path. And he just finished writing it kills me that I can't remember what it's called, but Yig Snake something. But very Cthulhu-esque stuff, and just finished writing a series of 4 or 5 books for that.
It looks like in 2019.
So I'm pretty sure that's why he was on hiatus.
Yeah, it looks like in 2019 he did a Pathfinder horse-sized duck, and a swarm of 100 duck-sized horses.
Are these only April Fools?
Yeah. Well, It looks like the only thing he posted on D20 Despot after November 12, 2018 are April Fools.
Yeah, well, because of his secret
but
project.
That sounds like it's the one thing he wasn't going to forfeit.
Yeah, because his secret project, which was then announced to be his 5e Cthulhu Mythos Adventures for Peterson Games.
Yeah, there you go. So if you scroll back further, there's actually some pretty... So he's a medieval history major. He went to England to study that for his master's. And so he takes, a first-hand look at a lot of medieval weaponry and stuff like that, and armor, and stats it up in a way that he thinks is probably painfully realistic. But also just brings new ideas from the martial arts that existed back then, and stats them up and brings new perspectives on how things could be statted up, or new ideas for different feats that are based in past reality.
So we have another comment from Nicole, who says that while it's really cool how some of the newest art is even more cohesive, that she also really likes seeing the individual styles of the artists. So how do you sort of balance for those two?
Yeah, so there's been a couple occasions where I've hired work out to somebody, and I think the thing that I try and keep most cohesive is the iconics, because they are so very well established. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're doing a lot more concept work now, is to make things more cohesive. But I've gotten a lot of work from artists before in the past where that is probably the thing that I send corrections back for the most frequently, where we get a character who is so well established, and the art we get back is just a little bit individual. And so we'll send back more reference and say, hey, thank you for your hard work. It needs to look just a lot more like this character that already exists. So there is certainly a lot of space for people to be creative and bring their own ideas. It just depends on the specific project that comes through. I think it's actually one of the successes of Paizo is that, one page to the next, you are getting a different art style because we employ so many different artists. And it brings a level of interest and a level of variety to our books that keep it interesting.
It's definitely fun to page through and just see all the cool pieces of art.
And when you look at the difference between sort of the style of first edition Pathfinder to second edition Pathfinder, and that compared to Starfinder, like, how do you sort of keep that straight so that you have these different brands that have their own identity, and you can look at it and you can be like, yes, that's a piece of Starfinder art versus that's a piece of Pathfinder art?
So is the question there, how can you tell the difference?
No, I mean, like, when you're how do you sort of convey I guess the question is, how do you sort of convey, like, this is what Pathfinder art looks like, and get that sense versus this is what Starfinder art looks like?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think all the different art directors probably have a variety of opinions on this. I find that Starfinder is a lot more saturated in its color palette, just because it can go into the world of the totally unrealistic, where Pathfinder can only really access that through magic or something. Whereas Starfinder, it's a little bit more casual and mundane. you can have a much more ordinary character that is much more colorful. Um, I think a lot of Pathfinder's work is to some extent derivative of Wayne Reynolds' stuff, and so it exists in the world that he has kind of created for that. And that's not to say anything bad about that at all. It's just to say that it is honed into the color palette that exists within his original iconics and his original work. And I think Starfinder moves past that in really colorful ways, and in ways that are, it almost seems like the boundaries of it are just not defined. So I've got an art in for that where it's, one person paints something that is super specific and super, like really tightly rendered. And right next to an artist who sent me something that's really painterly, but still, because it's an alien and something completely unfounded in any sort of folklore or fantasy, can be kind of, as exaggerated as it needs to be, as guided by the art.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question, because it's something that I've been wondering. When you're looking at sort of an alien species and portraying that, to what extent do you look at say, like, specific inspiration from real world creatures or myths or ideas versus looking to create something completely new? Like, how do you go about that?
So I think that's probably a matter of personal opinion. For my own work, I try and keep things as individual as possible. I think there's kind of a common route that artists take where they do a sort of chimera creature, where it's, an ape with antlers, and they call it something new, but you can tell that it's an ape with antlers.
Apler.
An apler, exactly. And like, it has its places, but I think it's more interesting to take aspects from those things, and look at the reasoning behind them, and then approach it from a new angle. So if something, is tree dwelling like an ape is, figure out why that is, what the mechanics of that are. Like, they have much longer arms because of it, and they have a much different posture and different stance. And then, if they need horns, like, what's the reasoning for that, and what's the reasoning that things have antlers, and approaching that from a new angle. So that way you don't end up just with something that is kind of a copy-pasted picture of two different existing animals. That said, I think it's one of the reasons that I do dive, is because it's this totally alien world that is unexpected, and we don't see, unless you're looking at the, Animal Planet or Planet Earth or something. Mm-hmm. Just going down there, all the rules change. For the most part, the anatomy of animals are just the same thing, squashed and stretched. We all have abdominals, we all have pectorals, we all have just the same anatomy. It's, 1-to-1, just given different priorities. You go underwater and you see a sea urchin or just some of these things where it's just like, you can't tell anymore if it's actually an animal or if it's, a vegetable. And because it walks that line, it breeds a lot of imagination, or inspiration for imagination. And so to draw from that is one of my more favorite approaches.
Cool. Linda, do you have any more of the piece of Kent's art that you have up there?
Yes.
I thought you had a few.
No, I
left
do.
Up the Mother Murder.
Yeah, I know, but I was just too interested in what Kent was saying. So
That's fair.
Apologies.
That's fair.
I'm gonna go ahead and pop up another one here. This one is a changeling who is stirring a cauldron
with two cloaked figures standing in the background.
Oh yeah, this is like a fever dream painting. I hardly remember it. It was some art order where they needed a girl from town or something, and then there were two witches behind it. And I think when it came down to it, I didn't want to paint the faces of the two witches because of a time constraint, so I gave them giant hoods instead. So instead I had to paint some fabric and one character and a couple extra hands and a of vat that they were stirring into. So it's actually kind of funny how real world constraints can inspire the composition of an art piece. But because of it, I think this piece actually turned out pretty well because of the mystery of, who are those people behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and kind of the dark hoods that are just sort of to both sides of her face just have a really striking contrast and make it all like very mysterious.
I thought that. I mean, I very much would have thought that was deliberate from the beginning, because that's part of what I find so striking about this piece is the idea that there's the changeling call to the hags, but the hags are shrouding the truth of what it is that they offer.
Yes, it definitely didn't come out of laziness. No, I think actually in their design, even the design of the hoods, I tried to make them sort of individual characters where, when you're looking at them while they're ominous, you can kind of see that they, between the two of them, have their own character. Mm-hmm. One is much more stout and squat, and the other one is taller and thinner. And in that, you can kind of decide, like, just without any context, what the relationship between these three are.
Yeah, I mean, to me the one on the right is more of the collected observer, and the one on the left is more of the this is what you're going to do now one.
Yeah, and Adam Daigle's talking about the gestures too being very, very different between them.
I think you'll see whenever I have to paint witches, I put in some holly and thistle or a bone of some unknown animal.
Get both here.
Why not both, right?
Absolutely.
So I had one other here that was not from Hyperspace or Pathfinder, a fawn that is it said it was one of your original pieces. It's black and white.
Oh yeah. So this was, I actually did a quick series of these weird little black and white things. If you look at my Instagram, you can find them. And I think they're dual posts because it was my first times playing with the iPad Procreate. And I just wanted to see the process of working on a new surface and a new interface. And so I think I was just doodling around and didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to paint. And just ended up painting a couple of different portraits of woodland creatures or ghosts or wizards, and then took the opportunity to write up kind of embarrassingly bad stories about who they were or what they were.
Well, the thing that really drew me in about this piece was the figure's eyes. How they really draw. They're clearly looking straight at you, and they are kind of human enough to be relatable, while also being different in a way that doesn't really match to at least any animal that I know of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of art that existed in the 80s, and Dungeons and Dragons Advanced, which was one of my original inspirations. I went to a neighbor's garage sale as a kid and found a monster manual and poured over that probably before I could read. And something that you started to notice was that they had all these great little rubies and gems placed absolutely everywhere, like they were growing on trees. And the inspiration from those has kind of carried through. Anytime I have an opportunity to do some material indication, just to make things look different. So between glass or wood or, making an eyeball look especially shiny, just to help sell the story of whatever that thing is. I try and take that as a chance.
Cool.
And now I've gotten sucked back into looking at your Instagram. I highly recommend that people check it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool pictures on there.
Yeah, I feel bad. I've not been a good host of that for a very, very long time.
So with this piece, and some of the other ones that I see here, I remember reading a comment on one of these that you are interested in Fae. So, as someone who's also interested in Fae, I was curious what it is that draws you to them.
I just, it's something that's existed in the real world as an idea for so long, and in so many cultures, it's developed naturally. So, I think there's something just inherently interesting there. It's just, it's kind of an early explanation of science, and an early explanation of the unknown is to blame it on mischievous woodland spirits and fey creatures like that. Uh, Growing up, my dad used to read Tolkien books and C.S. Lewis books to me all the time, and I think that was a early inspiration for bringing me into the world of appreciating the Fae. In college, I loved reading, Patrick Rothfuss books, and he dips into the world of the Fae pretty regularly, and uh, it's just always been, kind of this undefinable, but also this thing that no one person has ownership over either. Um, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I really have a lot of fun with it too, and I think you put it more eloquently than I may have thought to put it there, just in terms of the unknown and how people think to explain things. For me, also, it's the sense of the magnification of certain traits.
Right. Like anger could belong as an inherent trait to a creature in itself, or
Mm-hmm.
you could use some fake creature to explain, uh, why the moon comes up every night, or why the grass grows in certain areas. Or
Right.
it's just, it's also just early entertainment, which is our whole industry, is people telling stories, and coming up with fake creatures is something that I think we've done, since the beginning.
That's why it's called a fairy tale. So here's another question from Katrina, asking, aside from art and diving, do you have any other passions or interests?
uh, that's a good question. I love walking my dog. Um, I do that a lot. Yeah, honestly, art and diving take up a lot of my time. Um,
That makes sense.
so,
uh,
uh, yeah, just hanging out with friends and uh, uh, being creative, I guess.
Looks like in
Uh,
preparation for the next in-person PaizoCon, she also wants to know what your favorite drink is.
old fashioned.
So
It's it's a good one to go to because it's easy to remember.
I had another question from earlier. I know that on the writing side that I often find myself researching the weirdest things on Google. Is that a lot? Is that a lot of a part of what you wind up doing too, in terms of researching, like, oh, here's this biological fact I need, or here's this bit of history that I am not really sure, and let's see what this looks like.
Yeah, I do that to some extent. Just either through reading books or looking at things online and researching them. I probably do it a little bit differently than you. I get kind of the fundamentals of it, the first paragraph maybe, to get an idea of it in my head, and then I draw it 1,000 times. Because when I'm working on creating something, it's good to use reference, but if you already have the reference in your hand, that's a lot faster.
Hmm.
So if I find something interesting, I try and draw it as much as possible. Uh, I had a really great teacher in college. His name's Bob Cotto. And I went into class one week because I was frustrated because I couldn't draw hands. And he handed me a sketchbook and said, "Here, fill this with hands. It's due next week." Um, and so I did, and filled every single page with it. And uh, just having that kind of knowledge in your hand already as muscle memory is probably like reading, Wikipedia pages and researching deeply on things. If you can recall something quickly, like if I asked you guys uh, what your favorite monster was and why, it wouldn't take you any time to come up with the most obscure thing because you've done so much research everything that is in our books. So I have that quickly at hand is a huge help. But I guess to answer your question, because I've gotten off track here, yes, I do find myself doing that a lot. And working for Peterson Games for a while, I was drawing a lot of horror stuff. So I've also had the misfortune of seeing like a lot of just disgusting things so I could draw zombies. I've seen enough bed sores and broken arms and things like that to last me a lifetime.
Yikes. I remember reading that in the Renaissance, like, artists would, like, use cadavers to try to learn more about drawing the human body and, like, how people...
Oh, yeah.
And so
I
guess
did
it's
that
the
actually
same
in
sort
school.
of situation.
So when I was at school, one of my anatomy classes, we went to I think it was the UCLA morgue, or whatever their science was there, and we got to look at quartered human bodies and manipulate them and look at the insertion of the muscles, and it was really fascinating just to see like how we work, because it's all the same across everybody, and it influences your art quite a bit. And I think actually getting to see it firsthand was a real privilege. But also, I couldn't eat the turkey leg at Disneyland for a while after.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So you mentioned needing to look at those sorts of images. I'm curious about if there are any particular artists or movies or stories that you consider to be sort of some of the bigger sources of inspiration for you, either now or growing up.
Oh gosh, it's such a long list. I mean, I'll pay respects real quick to Wayne Reynolds. He's such a big part of Paizo, but also when I was looking at all the Pathfinder books back when I was in college, like it was his art that drew my eye. I find myself going a lot back to early American illustrators. N.C. Wyeth is a huge one for me because he was an illustrator who did a lot of kind of fantastical illustrations. There's one that I can think of specifically where it's a bunch of kids playing on a beach, and in the distance, out beyond the horizon, out above the water, there's a giant walking through the clouds, and it's just barely painted into the picture because it's like the artist has painted the atmosphere in between. So it captures something special, and I think it's something that has inspired me in my own work for a long time. J.C. Leyendecker, Norman Rockwell, and then the people who inspired them I look to as well. I think anytime you find somebody who inspires you, you should look at their inspirations as well, just because you don't want to be derivative of the freshest thing. Try and do your best to go back to the source, because eventually you find yourself looking at cave paintings, and there's a lot of inspiration that does really exist there.
So you're sort of like tracing the genealogy of your art influences back all the way to the beginning. It reminds me of something I saw where they had like a list of scientists, and they traced them back through their thesis advisor, like through like all the way back to a very, very far away.
Amazing.
So it was like my advisor, if you went back far enough, like you would get to like Isaac Newton or whatever, just
nice.
Through massive numbers of generations of, oh, this scientist was this scientist.
The whole 6 degrees of separation, Kevin Bacon.
That's way more than 6 degrees.
Yeah, no,
so
I know.
Many generations,
I know it's a lot more generations there, but I mean just the idea of the connections that you wouldn't necessarily expect once you put a few generations in there.
Right.
The truth of it is, we're all just standing on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for Wayne Reynolds, I wouldn't have my job today. And I do my work pretty quickly, but he started by painting with miniature paints, so it's a privilege to get to do what I do, and I'm very thankful to everybody who came before me to make this an industry in itself.
That is a very deft pivot from Newton to the Newton quote.
Well, also accidental. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm not that smart. I draw pretty pictures.
We just keep trying to give you credit, Ken.
Yeah, because like Shoulders of Giants is a really cool quote from Isaac Newton. So.
Well, I will remember that forever now.
Alright, let's see. I think we've got through the questions from chat, and we've got all the art pieces on there. Linda, did you have any more questions?
No. I think we covered all that I had for today. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we sign off, Cap?
Not really. I just want to say thank you, and I guess give a shout out to people who have inspired me in my life. My girlfriend, Morgan Arrington, she keeps me inspired every day, and her younger brother is a new adventure buddy that I'm adventuring with, and I think the people in the Paizo community have them to thank for keeping me active and keeping me inspired. And then also just my family and people. And I guess I'm saying this so that the people I've mentioned in this will someday, if they stumble upon this, feel recognized.
That's awesome.
That's very nice. All right. So in that case, let's say goodbye to the people on YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
Bye.
All right, everyone who's not on YouTube. Let's go really quickly through what other episodes we have coming up for the next few weeks. So we've got on Saturday is GM Tools, GMing with Kids. Then next week, Tuesday, is going to be Mark's Adventures War for the Crown, Part 5 of 5. Thursday, interview Organized Play manager Tanya Woldridge. And then Saturday, the 13th, is going to be GM Tools onboarding new players. Then finally, Tuesday, the 16th, is going to be GM Tools
Rock
Squirrels and Gods role-playing the
Uncanny.
Uncanny.
Yes.
That's right. So that's what we've got coming up, and we mentioned at the beginning of the episode that Paizo has put out a statement about the really serious situation that's going on right now, so everyone, if you have a charity that you're donating to, that's good. If you don't, Paizo's also putting something together. It says in the statement, and that'll come up at some point. But let's all do our part to try to make the world a little bit better than it is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. Go look at the National Bail Fund.
The National
People
Bail
are out
Fund.
there.
All
Yeah,
right,
people
let's
are
see.
out there trying to make a difference. And if you have an opportunity to help them financially, so they can keep going out, I suggest that.
Is the National Bail Fund Network, is that communityjusticeexchange.org? Or is
If
it
that's
the
what you
Bail
Googled, it
Project?
probably is. The National Bail Fund.
Yeah, the
Okay.
National Bail Fund Network. Here it is.
Yeah. All right. So
Got the link?
I will.
Oh, you got the link already?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, awesome.
Boom. So that is a link to the National Bail Fund Network.
Mhm.
That is a good suggestion. All right.
And another thing, well, which is apropos with an artist on here, is I've seen a lot of indie artists out there who are putting up a variety of fundraisers where they are taking commissions on art, and all of the money goes to important causes. So I also recommend checking those out. I know that on our Discord, tiny.cc/Arcane Mark in the art channel, Eleanor has been collecting a lot of profiles of artists, particularly artists from marginalized communities who are supporting these causes. So I recommend going in there, checking them out.
I've seen multiple things from her that are the commissions that all the money goes to the charity. So that's
supporting
that's a good
those
place to check.
charities and also supporting those artists afterwards.
That's right. So those are all Excellent ideas. I think that's about it for the day. So to everybody who is here, have a good day. If you can have a good day, try to have a good day. Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And hopefully we'll see you on Saturday for jamming with kids. Bye. We are still going because Linda was